Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time.
When you add a shake of Frank's Red Hot, you open a world of better. A world where wings bring out the flavor of game day any day. Where buffalo chicken dip takes any party up a notch. And where any slice of pizza instantly becomes the world's best slice of pizza. At least until the next slice. Bring every bite to life with the perfect blend of flavor and heat. Frank's Red Hot. I put that shit on everything.
Guys, welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and today we are going to be talking about relationship envy. The grass is greener on the other side, right? I think what I've understood and what I hear in the ethers, but also have experienced, is that there is this perception of singleness from people who are in relationships, and sometimes vice versa, right? I want to be as impartial as possible, but what I've understood is that when you're single, the implication is that you have more time and you're not as quote unquote busy with your life as somebody who's in a relationship because they have a significant other or they have kids or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of like, a lot of times people turn their nose up at single people, or they just disregard people who are not in relationships because they don't have time, right? So we're going to get into this because I think it's a very interesting thing, and I want to bring up something very important that may be missing from the conversation as a whole, okay? So buckle up. If this hits you in your chest, this is something to think about, whichever side you exist on. And I'm going to do my best to speak from my own experiences, I'm going to do my best to speak from my own experiences, okay? So yeah, if you're at home, find somewhere comfortable. If you're driving, put on your seatbelt, get some water, and we're going to get into this. All right, stay tuned. All right, so I'm going to read this quote to you. I wish we talked more about this. Being in your 20s, 30s, and single without a big friendship group, you have friends, but they're all in relationships, married, or have closer friends. No one messages or checks in regularly. You spend majority of your time alone, doing things solo, practicing self-care, which is great, but can also feel very isolated and lonely at times. And it was crazy because seeing that, I was like, oh shit, that's interesting. And then seeing how many people could relate. The funny thing is, as big as this world is and as busy as we all claim to be, everybody's kind of on the same wavelength in terms of what they're feeling, right? And that's a very interesting realization when it's all said and done. That is very interesting in terms of, what our experiences are, our collective experiences, what it looks like, what it feels like. And it's just rare, I think, people talk about it because there's this fear of, what's what I'm looking for? There's fear of embarrassment. There's fear of seeming othered, right? Seeming like, oh yeah, you're just whining and complaining and, go out there and make friends. It's up to you to make friends, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes people will say that. I pay attention to the people who have that dialogue, and I ask myself, well, what kind of friend are they? And are they in a relationship? Because it's easy for somebody to tell somebody what to do and how to feel when they don't have to experience it, right? Oh yeah, you should just do this, or you should go do that. It's like, but I'm gonna still go back home to my significant other because that occupies my time. I have somebody that I can go back to and I can go home to, right? There's comfort there. So I can kind of talk from my platform and still lack a level of empathy for you, right? We fail to realize, the isolation and loneliness that exists in this world isn't because a person's necessarily single. You could be in a relationship and be very alone, right? And then that kind of lets us know that relationships a lot of times are not about companionship and not about building each other. It's about having comfort and having a buffer and having a distraction from oneself, right? The need to attach versus the desire to connect. Ooh. Ooh. The need to attach versus the desire to connect. And I just find it so funny in terms of like the dynamics between, and this becomes a very heated conversation between people who are in relationships and people who are single. And it's like, if you're in a relationship and that's how you move or that's how you talk to people, don't forget, you didn't come into this life with a partner. You sought it out. You made it a point to have that partner. That took active effort for you to have this relationship, right? That was something that you decided that you wanted to have, so you did it. And, it's all fun and games until you get slapped in the face. And the idea that some people are afraid of being with themselves is something that I've also understood too. And, I think it's funny because when I'm in a relationship, you wouldn't necessarily know it unless I told you. The reason why is because I don't change as a person. I integrate all aspects of my life into the fold versus feel like I'm being pulled in every which way. And I think that's by design for me personally, right? Because I've talked about this before. My goal in my life is the relationships I have in my life are very intentional. They're not buffers. No one is insignificant in my life if they're there, right? The room they take up is intentional room. I don't make space for things that I don't need or want. So therefore, any relationship that I have comes with a certain territory, right? A certain level of intention, a certain grounding for myself, but also for the other person. Because I don't want to have a full plate to the point that I can't pay attention to the relationships that matter to me. And they have to pick up the slack, or the requirement is that they be more understanding of my neglect, right? They have to become more understanding of my neglect for the relationship to survive. It's like, no, absolutely not. I just learned how to prioritize. And the way I think about, and, even more to that point, the reason why I am so intentional about my relationships, because I recognize and understand too, the people I have in my life, for the most part, the people that stick are people that are just as thoughtful, right? Just as thoughtful as I am. So therefore, my desire to make sure that that relationship stays healthy, which means that anybody who comes into my life, they have to have the same level of trajectory. Their moral compass has to be the same, what they value and everything like that in terms of people kind of has to be there, because I'll be damned if you think that you are now going to control my entire life, or you're going to tell me who my friends should be and all this other shit. Like, that's not happening. And my friends aren't going to do the same to them. It's more about we come to the middle, because that's my family, right? I don't really have a, I find that, when some people get into relationships, that becomes their whole identity. And it's like, well, screw my friends until my relationship goes sour. And to me, that's what I take personal offense to, because it's like, okay, friendship does matter to you. It only matters when you need one. It doesn't matter to you to be one. And that's a problem, right? Because it lets us know that people are very aware a lot of times of getting their needs met. It's just that they're not willing to be of service to other people. And that's why I think, a person that's single can still be very selfless, right? Single people are usually making time for the people that are in relationships, right? I'm making time. It's not that I have extra time. It's like I'm making time. And everybody's busy with what they're going to be busy with, right? Let's call it that. You make time for what you want to make time for. And, there were times I talked to my mom. I'm on the phone with her. She's like, "Are you bored? Do you ever get bored?" I'm like, "No, I always have something to do." And then sometimes she called me and be like, "Hey, let me call you back. I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. I'll call you back when I'm finished. And then when I'm talking to her on the phone, I was like, all right, cool. Let me let you go because I got to go do this thing. Da, da, da. She's like, every time I talk to you, you're always doing something. You always have something to do. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It is not me distracting myself from myself, obviously, because I spend a lot of time with Isaiah. It's me doing things that feel fulfilling. It's me making sure I check in on my relationships. It's me making sure I'm devoted as a person, and the space that I take up in people's lives is intentional, right? Being single or in a relationship, it doesn't matter because it doesn't really define who you are as a person. How you move within those spaces is who you are, right? Selfish people are in relationships too. Like I said, sometimes it's not about connection, it's more about attachment. It's about getting your needs met versus how you're willing to provide in the relationship. What does this relationship do for me? Right? That's why some people are like, oh yeah, this person doesn't make me happy. Well, do you make yourself happy? Right? What are you doing for yourself? Or did that all, get thrown out the window when you got into a relationship? Because now this is this is your goal in life, to have a relationship. And it's mixed, right? Because there may be some single people who may have a perception of being in a relationship where it's like, oh yeah, you have it all, you're happy, you got everything you want. And it's like, well, sometimes people are in relationships and they're still very single. Still very single. And I've noticed it. People talk, or just conversations, or you could pay attention to body language. You can see how people interact with each other, right? One is not necessarily what's the word I'm looking for? Not a byproduct, but one is not a substitute for the other. Because like I said, two selfish people could exist in a relationship. Okay. And they have each other for the sake of making sure they're not without, right? And I think a lot of times if somebody never had the experience really being by themselves, they don't know what goes into that. Like if a person's single, and let's say they're single, they don't really have family around, whatever the case may be, they have to look out for themselves, right? And it's not just looking out for myself in a selfish way. I have to make sure I'm good. I have to make sure I'm healthy. If no one's checking in, yeah, I got to make sure I get things done, right? For me, I got to make sure that I'm okay. Like literally okay. If something was to happen to me, who's around? No one, right? And then someone says, well, that's your choice. Not necessarily, because truth be told, everybody that you come across is not necessarily willing to be an intentional person in their relationship. So it's not just about going out into the streets and picking somebody off the street and being like, hey, we're going to date, or hey, we're going to be friends. A lot of people don't know how to be friends, and a lot of people definitely don't know how to be healthy partners. So that's not the fix to being single, and a lot of times people who are single may have decided, I don't really want to be in a relationship anymore because I've had to heal from some things, and not even heal from the previous relationship, but maybe heal from some familial trauma, or maybe heal from some friendship trauma, because that's a thing too, right? We have to be more mindful of the dialogue that we spew and the labels that we place on people, or the identities that we give people without their permission, in terms of what their life is like, because they don't have other things in the way. It's like, no, look, if I'm single and I'm still making time for you, that means that I still care about this relationship. And this is a relationship that I'm still willing to invest in. You get me? It's not because I'm lonely. It's because, well, this relationship matters to me. And you have to, at the end of the day, whether you're single or you're in a relationship, you just have to find people who have a certain level of empathy, right? A certain level of understanding and curiosity, and a willingness to see past their own needs. Okay? That's all. You just have to find people that exist in that space of giving a damn about people beyond just what they see on the surface, and also giving a damn about people beyond just what their needs are specifically. Okay? That's it. That's it. You just have to find people that are selfless, and people that, obviously have healthy boundaries, but people that care about you outside of their convenience. Okay? People that make time for the relationship, not just use it as a buffer. Oh, when I have time versus let me make time. Okay. And then if you find yourself constantly in these dynamics where you are the one that's, making time and is not really reciprocated, then that's an opportunity to change. Because one thing I've also understood is that the significance of who you are is probably bigger than what you realize. All right. I had that pointed out to me earlier this week. It's so funny sometimes we think that how we show up, it doesn't matter and it doesn't have impact on people because the people that we're hoping to be seen by or valued by or respected by seem to be coming up short. But then there are other people who don't even know you that well that recognize how you make them feel and how you treat them. You're valued, right? You are definitely valued and you are a significant component in somebody's life, whether you realize it or not. And sometimes we may want to believe that we're insignificant because there's less responsibility there, right? If I don't believe that I'm that important of a person, I could kind of dip in and out of people's lives without responsibility of owning up to it, right? I can settle for not giving my best. I can criticize myself, right? I could downplay my work. I could do all of these things that minimize me and shrink me if I believe that I'm not significant. And that allows me to kind of live life under the radar, right? If I believe that I'm insignificant, then I won't have to try as hard. Or if I believe that I'm insignificant, the work that I do and as hard as I work to be a significant person, I could constantly downplay and reject, right? So I create this vicious cycle of rejection, right? When you finally accept how significant you are as a person, it's going to change some things. Okay. It's going to change how you see yourself. It's going to change you being in situations and relationships where people seem to not see you, right? A lot of things are going to stop. Okay. And you're going to realize, well, maybe I have a little bit more responsibility than what I have been willing to accept, because it's responsibility there. Once you understand your significance and how important you just may be, there's responsibility there, right? And people will kind of call you out. People will go looking for you. And it's not so much about being needed, right? I don't think, I saw this other post. This was just a week of very interesting things. And it just lets me know that, as a society, we're quiet about very big feelings. We're quiet about very big feelings. But someone had said, being a people pleaser, a lot of times is not you wanting to be needed, is you wanting to feel wanted. Is you just wanting to feel like you matter. You don't want people to need you, right? Who wants that? Some people do want it, right? I myself don't want that. My desire is not to go through this world and have people who need me. I don't want that. I want you to need yourself. And that's why I offer up this information and I talk about the things I talk about, because it's like, when it's all said and done, after I finish recording this, I'm going on about my life because I have other things to move on to and I have other things to do. And I'm going to be taking care of myself and my relationships, right? But even in my relationships, the goal is to not have them need me, right? We don't need to be needed. Feeling significant is important, but being needed, no. Right? Because if you think you need someone, then you overlook your significance and your identity as an individual. You get me? So understand is like, do I want to be needed or do I want to be wanted? Do I want to feel significant? Is that what I'm lacking? And again, sometimes in this discourse of being single and in relationships, sometimes it feels like you're doing something wrong because you've made time for the people in your life. And because they can't make time, or they refuse to, or they just don't prioritize the relationship as much, you now feel defective because you're willing to do that. Okay? It's all about perspective. It's all about intention. And again, it's all about empathy. And like I said, some people may not understand your experience because they've never had to experience it. They just might not get it, right? And they don't really try to get it. And I think sometimes being single, people may perceive you as like, oh yeah, you you have the ability to do anything you want. And it's like, yeah, the things that I'm doing the things that I want. And I'm also making time for the relationships that are important to me. So yeah, being single means that I have choice. But being in a relationship doesn't stop you from having that choice. You're just making a choice. We're always making choice. And someone's like, well, what about kids? What about children? Are a choice, right? In the grand scheme, children are a choice. And you have to ask yourself, well, why do you have children if they seem like such a burden for you? Because that's a conversation people don't want to have either. It's like, well, why do you have children if, the thing is like, oh, well, you don't have kids, so you wouldn't get it and all these other things. It's like, well, maybe some people had to raise children while they were children, right? Maybe some people have already experienced what it's like to raise a child without having their own. You don't know that. But because somebody doesn't have a kid attached to them, the automatic perception is like, oh, yeah, you don't know what this life is like. Be willing to be curious about people and be willing to truly understand somebody's experience beyond what you're just seeing. Because I can guarantee you, sometimes people are a lot more interesting than what they let on to. Right? A lot more interesting. A lot more interesting. And I think that's the hang up too. It's like, people don't take the time or make the time to get to know the people in their lives. Right? It's just kind of like, oh, you're here. I know a lot more about people than they do about me sometimes. I will honestly say that. I'm a curious person, and I'm not an intrusive or nosy person either. It's like, I'm a curious person. Like, I want to get to know you. I want to understand you. Like, I want to explore who you are. I love that. I love getting to know people. And the reason why is because I get to pick up on things that are important or things that I value about this person without them even knowing that that's something that's like special, right? It's like a painting almost. It's like an abstract painting. If you really look at people, sometimes you got to tilt your head to see the full picture. Sometimes you got to take a step back. Sometimes you got to move a little closer, right? Sometimes you got to look past just that picture and kind of see into the details because there are hidden little images in there. People are not necessarily just blank canvases. There's depth, there's palettes, there's different hues, right? There's different textures. There's so much that's going on with another human. And if you yourself are an interesting human, you will find interest in the humans that you cultivate space with, right? I don't always think I'm the most interesting person until I talk to someone and they remind me, right? Because this is what I do at my capacity. This is just who I am. So therefore, like I said, we don't always get to experience ourselves at the same capacity that other people do. We never will, unfortunately, right? You will never get to experience yourself the same way somebody else does. And sometimes that's a beautiful thing, right? Because now you have a mirror that gets to show back who you are as an individual. Relationships are relationships, y'all. And it's all about who a person is in their relationships of all kind. Their willingness to be there, their willingness to be present, right? Their willingness to be intentional, their willingness to prioritize. That's all it comes down to, right? Being in a relationship doesn't necessarily change you. It brings out more of who you are. And like I said, being single doesn't make you less selfless, right? And being in a relationship doesn't make you less selfish. It just all depends on the person and their priorities. And you have to be around people who are willing to see you past their own convenience, right? Who check in, who make sure you're good, who make time for you, right? It's not just these little blips on the radar. It's like, nah, I'm intentional about the time. I want to make time for you. I want to make space for this relationship for it to be nurtured and breathable. That's the goal. That's the goal. And be honest about who you are as a person, right? What are your demands? Why am I single? What are my expectations of my other relationships? And never feel bad about wanting to connect and have deeper bonds with people. That's something you shouldn't feel guilty about. It's just a matter of who you're seeking it from. And if somebody is constantly making you feel like it's an ask, like it's a task to develop a deeper bond with them, then maybe those aren't your people. And that's okay, right? There are a billion people in the world, and a lot of them are obviously experiencing the same level of loneliness of some capacity. But you have choice. There are other people out there who would probably kill to have a friend like you, or kill to have someone like you in their lives, even as a significant other. Okay? And then the question is like, well, how do you find each other? Well, look on social media. It just comes down to your willingness. Your willingness to connect with people, and other people willing to connect with you, because everybody's kind of crying out for the same thing. It's just a matter of, all right, cool, what am I going to do now? Because that comment section on that video is large, right? And it just lets us know that, again, there are very big feelings that are being minimized. But now it comes down to, what effort are you willing to make? And sometimes, truth be told, is like, some people just want to vent. I understand that. Some people just want to vent and they're not looking for a solution. And then the idea of relationships as a whole can be scary, depending on what your past looks like. But again, intention matters, and we have to be what we seek. And it all comes down to, what kind of person are you willing to be, and what kind of person are you expecting to be on a receptive end? All right. I hope you guys take care of yourselves, and I hope you guys take care of the relationships that are important to you. I hope you guys take care of each other when it's all said and done. Yeah, if you like the podcast, rate and review, leave a comment, let the people know what you like. I might talk more about relationships moving forward, especially since Valentine's Day. It's the month of love, or heartbreak, depending on where you are. But yeah, if you like the podcast, leave a rating or review. If you want to book coaching session, sign up for coaching and work with me through some things, I'm down. I'm accepting new clients. And what else? If you want to become a patron or Apple subscriber, you get bonus content, ad-free episodes. You get early access to these episodes. And if you want to get some merch, the link is also in the bio too. I think that's about it, guys. But yeah, just appreciate the people in your lives. It's not complicated, right? It's only complicated when you're not honest about your priorities and whether or not you value the relationship as much as you say you do. That's all. All right? Take care of yourselves, yeah? Take care of each other. Take light.